On page 15.
All right.
Page 15, it's in here multiple times, at least twice. But we're not enforcing it. If you
Well,
want to take
2.13 doesn't tell you that you're gonna get thrown out in 90 days, so.
No. No, we didn't go that strong. Yeah, we put a lot of effort in it. That's a lot. Brand like, let's say, pilot community, good money. Those are some big changes already, man. Because nothing. Very few things have been documented, and it was kind of put self-play where you. Yes.
Okay. So this licensed pilots actually isn't.
Oh, yeah. Are you doing good?
We have airplanes from Mexico and things that they don't have that many boxes, but it's. Not one of them. 2.12,
2.12.
that's unenforceable too.
All right, it is 5 o'clock, so I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll take a look at the minutes, go over them.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
We have a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right, moving on to our discussion items. We have discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding airport financials. Adam, are you ready?
I am, yes, ma'am. So in your packet, I got the usual documentation for you, P&L balance sheet, and I've got a few other things I'd like to go over, kind of give a end of year synopsis, if you will. Starting with the P&L, just kind of hit the high notes for the month of December 2024. We've got our total income $147,452.45, with our cost of goods sold being $58,956.71, with a gross profit of $88,495. Total expenses, we had $66,828.33, leaving us a net operating income of $21,667. This is coming right out of a month-long closure in December. I think we bounced back pretty good for the month. Some other income to note, obviously our interest in our bank account, $1,281. City appropriations, $7,500. And then during this time period, we got a grant through ALDOT of $179,579. Again, net income at the bottom there, just for all intents and purposes of other incomes minus expenses, $199,586.06. On the balance sheet, bank accounts, $976,000. Accounts receivable through the end of the period. Again, we are not due until the 15th of the next month. We had $11,204.38 of receivables. Our inventory, line 125, $52,444.05 of inventory at the end of the period. The total assets being $13,864,986.76 for the end of the balance sheet. Going into the other documents that's in your packet, I just wanted to share with you a little bit of end of year. FY23, I did something similar with Warehouse, giving me some data from when they were doing our books, and I'm just adding to that essentially. The first there is the operating funds. So essentially, we are going from FY19 of 428,000 to FY 2020 of 406,000, 21 620,000, 22 736,000, 23 749,000, to the end of 24 being 801,000. This is essentially a 15% increase. The next document that you have is our revenue. I'll just kind of give an overview of the beginning of the chart to the end of the chart. FY19 was 186,774. FY19, we did not have the FDO. That come at the end of FY 2020. FY 23, just to kind of give a comparison between the years, FY 23 was $2,084,022.35 for the year. FY 24 was $2,389,746.26. This is a increase of 15%.
Money at the air.
Our investment for the year, as far as what we invested, again, that was obviously a synopsis that didn't include grant money. That didn't include any appropriations or anything below the operational line in our P&L. We invested in FY 24 alone $1,900,599.90 into the airport. Our expense for the period, which is not dictated in your spreadsheets, FY 23, our operational expense was $888,000. FY 24 operational expense was $821,000. Decreased. That's all I have for the financials. I'll answer any questions seeking approval of that information.
Have any questions for Adam? All right, do we have any motions to approve the financials?
Motion to approve the financials as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Airport financials have been approved. All right. Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding airport projects. Adam?
Yeah, I just want to run through and give everybody an update on all of our projects. Starting with the Northwest, I had a very successful meeting with a contractor to kind of wrap that project up. We are waiting to hear back from them on a few of the quote unquote punch list items and a few things, getting them to essentially leave the job site and take a pay reduction essentially for those items that they are still failing on to meet specification and design. This is something that essentially would be applied back to our note that we have for the project. Also on that, we are looking at submitting an application to another drawdown of the AIG Build Back Better funds from Biden administration. So that is something that hopefully this spring we can get knocked out and get applied to the loan as well. The Southeast Taxiway project has been going extremely well. They're still well ahead of the schedule, even considering snow days and rain days and other things that factor a project of this magnitude. We are very fortunate with those contractors. They are doing weekly calls with us to give us updates, give us schedule arrangements. Here recently, we basically knocked out a good portion of the electrical side of the project that would basically cause another closure, but because of all of us putting our minds together at the beginning of the project, we never presented it as such because we were able to get this done outside of the safety area and the object-free area of the runway. So this is something that basically went on behind the scenes since the beginning of the project. Basically what they did was they bored up underneath the runway the conduit that was needed so that they can run the home run all the way from the project to our electrical vault up here. So that was very good to get that knocked out. We're waiting on the materials to show up. They basically, a lot of these airport lighting, they make it as soon as we order it. So it's not like someone's got a bunch of spare parts on a shelf to be able to give us. So that's always a hard lead time. So the fact that we got that in such a timely manner is a success in my eyes. As far as the phase 2, in December, I talked about us getting another grant. It's roughly $775,000 roughly. We have been talking with ALDOT, the FAA, on essentially a pre-application meeting to discuss the scope of the project. discuss, how far the project will go and the different aspects of it so that our stakeholders can get on the same page with us. So we've had that meeting. We are looking at potentially getting another grant from AlDOT on top of that grant in the form of a 50-50. So essentially we can get more out of our apron with these funds. So more to come on that as things progress and the project is designed. But I want to let y'all know that those conversations have been taking place. That's all I have as far as airport projects.
All right, any questions for Adam?
Oh, the cargo sign, I'm afraid if you leave it uncovered, and I spoke to you about a year or so ago about that. Now that the taxiway's open though, I think it ought to be covered up because you're gonna have a cargo plane coming here late one night and nose down that taxiway. And if you've never flown a cargo plane in the middle of the night in an unfamiliar airport, it's an easy mistake to make. So I think we ought to cover it up. A trash bag would work. Because there's only one way in that taxiway.
So I got concerns with the trash bag. The other option is we could literally take the sign apart from where the contractor made it.
Yeah,
You could do that. The trash bag's a liability,
yeah.
as when wind gets up, it's gonna blow somebody final approach and could.
I'm just afraid of a DC-9 turning left there and then
Yeah.
not having a way to get it back.
Yeah, the other aspect,
Or 737, so you're gonna have problems. So
the other aspect of that I'm very proud of is that our staff is extremely good. So when we have cargo planes, by the time that they actually get on final approach, we initiate communication with them at that point in time. But to your point, I will look into it to see about flipping the signs or coming up with a method.
just something.
And I'll contact our engineer to see if that's something that we can do, and as well as the FAA to see if that is something that we are actually capable of doing
Right.
with standards. I will search that.
Ounce prevention. Thank you.
Any other questions for Adam? All right, moving on to discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding long-term ground leases. Adam?
Yes, just want to give you all an update. There's a lot in the works here as far as our ground leases. Some that we're expecting to be signed, and then obviously some that are already signed. So I'll go through some of those now. The hangar, the private hangar on the other side of the summer air hangar, we've had our initial kickoff meeting, which is essentially making sure that they understand the scope of their work, what is kind of as far as zones, as far as expectations, even through the civil side to all the way down to the actual execution of the project itself. We were able to talk about that from a tabletop discussion and make them aware of expectations. The good thing is the contractor is the same contractor that built the other hangar. So they are very used to what is expected of them. More to come on that as they go through the engineering phase. Again, they will not start construction until you all have seen the plans and approved the plans. So that is to come later. Right now, they're just going through that initial engineering. And as they get 25%, 50%, 75%, GMC and I will meet with them to discuss what they've come up with. They'll make revisions and changes based on standards, our standards, FAA standards, and otherwise. And then once they have those complete, then it'll be brought to you for consideration to allow them to actually start the construction. Again, so it's a two-step process there. We got a letter, I believe it was early December from Acquisition Integration stating that they are looking to move forward at the beginning of this year. That they are looking to get back in the loop of things, that they basically had a lot of shortcomings in the business, but essentially they're still committed to the ground lease, committed to their plan that they have submitted to us, and more to come on that as we get closer to the time period that they gave me. And then we've obviously got our friends with Strategy that are looking at entering into a ground lease. Strategy, the Aleutian tribe, the Alaskan tribe that we've been talking about. They are through with the legal process. We had a meeting last month to go over all the details of it. Met with their legal team there to discuss the lease and had some feedback from them. I gave some explanations on a few things that we have there, and we were able to satisfy them. So with that being said, I think that here in the near future, hopefully we'll have a consideration for a long-term ground lease with those folks. That's all I have for long-term ground leases.
Any questions for Adam? No? All right. Moving on to discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding fair and equitable treatment. Mr. Sheriff?
Okay, before I get started, did anybody else bring the logbooks to the airport? For the meeting that I asked you guys for? Hey? No?
Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, did you bring your logbooks like I asked?
You are not in charge of me.
I asked you, all I'm asking, did you bring the logbooks that I asked you to bring? And did you bring yours, Larry?
No.
And Adam sent me an email. I assumed.
Why should I have brought it?
Well, just,
Answer the question.
I'm gonna answer the question.
Please do.
I am. It's my floor, not yours. Right? So the reason I asked you guys that, because we need to be fair and equitable to everybody here. And any of the rules that we make, the employees and the board should have to follow those rules as well. So the reason I asked the logbooks is I assumed you guys didn't want to bring your logbooks. So I kind of counted on you not bringing it. Because you're making my point. The rule that Adams talked about last month, requires airworthy aircraft within 90 days. Who's going to make that determination? The reason I asked for the logbooks tonight from Faith and Larry, myself, and Adam was to make a point that nobody wants anybody going through their logbooks. Nobody on this board is qualified to decide what's airworthy and what's not airworthy. The pilot in command is the only person that decides that. Half of the airplanes on this airport probably aren't airworthy for one reason or another any given day. Any given day. So thank you for making my point. The rules 213, the last sentence, aircraft must be airworthy, is not even enforceable right now. It hasn't been enforceable. The board, when I started, did everything it could at this airport to remove non-airworthy and derelict aircraft from stored hangars. At the last board meeting, minutes of the previous board meetings were brought up where I spoke of during such was not illuminated by such an apparent. What it is I made the same statements that Adam made about the airworthy aircraft. But at a point in time, the board realized that we didn't have the authority or the wherewithal to decide whose aircraft was unairworthy and whose aircraft was airworthy. So he makes a good argument for what we said at the board meetings, but there's just no way to do it. So what I propose is that any of the rules that we have, whereas it is not this board's place or the employee's place of this board, the obligation to determine airworthiness of any aircraft, and whereas it is the goal of the airport board to act in a fair and equitable manner, therefore be it resolved that the Pryor Field Airport Authority will not unfairly make or apply rules equally and uniformly to all tenants and participants at Pryor Field. Be it further resolved, this board will make no formal or informal determination of aircraft airworthiness. So that's my motion.
We have a second.
And that's your answer.
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have 3 opposed.
Fair enough.
All right, next up, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding uniformed rules for everyone.
Well, without the first one passing, there's not much point in me even discussing the second one.
Okay. Moving on, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding rules and regulations update. Adam?
Yes, ma'am. So we have got several rules here that predate me. I just want to reiterate a few things. FAA definition of airworthiness means the aircraft conforms to its type design, is in a condition for safe operation. Airworthiness equals safe. Our rules that predates me, and by the way, I'll just say this, there are a lot of things that need to be changed or tweaked that will eventually come before you all from me as a consideration for you all to adopt. But it's not the time and place because we've got other things that are more precedent in front of us. We are on a trajectory of new heights. We are in what I say is the age of economic development, and I'm trying to have us all ride that aircraft into the sunset, if you will. Rule 2-12, which again, I'm not sure when these were adopted. This is quote unquote industry standard. It's a little vague for my liking, but it is industry standard where a lot of airports adopt these. I just want to go over some of these rules. I want to read the rule addition that I'm looking to clean up some things with, and then I want to explain the reason why we have to do that. It's 2-12 licensed pilot. It says, I'm just going to read the part that applies to this scenario. Only aircraft with current and correct FAA certificates of registration and airworthiness and persons holding valid and current airman and medical certificates issued by the FAA for those flight operations requiring medical certificates shall be authorized to operate aircraft upon the airport except as provided in this ordinance/order. It goes into part 103 years after that, which is the exception there. 2-13 title registration. Each person owning an aircraft based at the airport or any persons based and receiving flight instructions towards an FAA rating at the airport shall register at the office of the airport manager their name, address, telephone number, aircraft model, aircraft registration N number, or make and model of the aircraft for those not requiring registration, ultralight, and the name, address, telephone number of their next of kin or person to be notified in case of an accident or emergency. Aircraft must be airworthy. The other item that pertains to me giving a hangar to somebody that will use it for not the intended purpose of the FAA, which I'll go into in just a minute, which is a grant assurance of ours if we accept federal funds and state funds. 2-19 is the only thing that really applies to a, if you don't do this scenario, then there's actions. And it is titled abandoned property. It says no property shall be abandoned at the airport. Abandoned, derelict, or lost property found at the airport, including without limitation, aircraft, vehicles, equipment, machinery, baggage, or partial property thereof shall be reported to the airport manager. Property unclaimed by its proper owner within 30 calendar days shall become property of the authority to be sold, used, or surrendered to local law enforcement or disposed of at the discretion of the authority. In the event that the authority determines that an aircraft owner or operator is unable or fails to, after being notified by certified mail, to remove non-airworthy aircraft, the aircraft may be removed by the authority at the risk, cost, and expense of the aircraft owner or operator without liability of the authority for damage arising from, out of, related to such removal. Essentially, the way the rules read currently is that no way possible is a non-airworthy or home build experimental to be allowed on the airport. Rule 16.2, this is the addition that I am proposing for consideration tonight. All new leaseholders must have an airworthy, flyable aircraft within 90 days after the execution of the lease. This is not existing customers. This is not existing lessees. This is all new leaseholders. So in other words, in the eyes of all stakeholders, they can look at me and say, Adam, are you upholding our grant assurances? And I can say, moving forward, we are doing everything to the standard of the FAA. To continue, leaseholders who are building their own experimental aircraft are eligible for a hangar only for final assembly of the aircraft. Experimental aircraft must be in an airworthy, safe, flying condition within 1 year of signing the lease. Tenants that do not have an airworthy flying aircraft within the allotted timeframes will be notified to remove all belongings from the hangar facility. After 30 days, the items will be removed from the hangar by the authority at the owner's risk and cost. Under special circumstances, times can be adjusted with written permission from the airport director. That first sentence is more in line with what I would say is the FAA's vision for hangar. Doesn't say that you can't have a non-airworthy aircraft in the hangar. The intended use, though, is for aeronautical activity, which is a flying aircraft. Doesn't say behind that flying aircraft, can you not bring an RV from your garage and put it together? There's nothing that says you can't do that. The way that I've worded it, all new leaseholders must have an airworthy flying aircraft. What they do behind that aircraft to make us have another based airplane. So in other words, they can get something that has to be reskinned with, whatever, or maybe they're waiting on an overhauled engine to bolt up to it. As long as it's their airplane, they can do the maintenance to it inside those private hangars and be just fine. The way the other rules read, they are not allowed to do that. A non-airworthy airplane is not allowed on the airport, period. Now, I am proposing a rule that would allow those things, and of course, under special circumstances. I'd love to dive into that. If someone is actively undergoing maintenance in the eyes of the FAA, that is justified. We're justified to put a time frame on when they have to have it repaired. So in other words, a tenant can't take 15 years to do something that should have taken 2 months. And that consideration, I think that obviously we revert back to the rule of, you've got under special circumstances, okay, you've had an accident with your airplane and you need now, because of a prop strike, an overhaul, tear down, or otherwise, with your mechanic that is authorized to work on it, then there should be some sort of check-in on that and some sort of communication from my office to them. Essentially, what we're trying to do is abide by the hangar use policy. An email that I sent to the board goes over a few of these things. Essentially, an airport authority has, I'll just start here. An airport authority has the authorization to relocate non-operational or unairworthy aircraft from the hangars. We must get FAA approval to even designate where those non-aeronautical aircraft should go. We have to get approval from that. That is part of the FAA's hangar use policy. So we can't even remove them and just say, this ramp is designated for derelict aircraft. This is because airports that accept federal funding are required to comply with FAA grant assurances, particularly Grant Assurance 5, preserving rights and powers, Grant Assurance 19, operation and maintenance, Grant Assurance 22, which allows us to apply a rule to a select few, which in this case, the new class is new leaseholders. To select a few, which I've indicated as new leaseholders. Therefore, this would be considered fair and consistent to apply the rule to only the new leaseholders. As current leaseholders, if there's an opportunity that should arise that we have new leaseholders that sign a new lease because they're moving hangars, they are trading off, they sell the airplane, you all grant to allow the new person to sign the lease or otherwise, then they would have to abide by the new rule, which basically means that they have to have a flying airplane. Why is flying airplane even, considered in the language? Because again, the pilot in command is in charge of determining if it is airworthy, not me, not anybody else, unless I was to go and fly that airplane, of course, and then I would be in charge of the airworthiness. So furthermore, these grant assurances ensure that the airport facilities, including hangars, are used for their intended purpose, which is primarily to support aeronautical activity. Storing non-airworthy or abandoned aircraft in hangars as the primary aircraft can be seen as a violation of these assurances because it restricts space availability for operational aircraft and aeronautical activities. The only way to approve non-aeronautical activities, the only way to approve non-aeronautical purposes for hangar facilities is to contact the FAA secretary and get written approval from them. My take is that each hangar must have an airworthy flying aircraft. Not trying to say that they can't have a project plane in the corner, as I explained earlier. Storing only non-airworthy aircraft with little to no attempt to make it airworthy is nothing more than a storage facility in my eyes. That actually, in my eyes, would constitute a non-aeronautical rate, which you have to go get appraised at market rate and apply it there. So it's going to be a whole lot more than $250. The FAA also provides guidance through their policy on non-aeronautical use of airport hangars, FAA Order 5190.6B. which allows airport authorities to enforce rules for hangar use, such as requiring aircraft to store in these hangars to be airworthy or actively undergoing maintenance to become airworthy. Again, if the aircraft is deemed unairworthy or abandoned, the airport authority may give them time to address the issue, repair it, relocate it otherwise, relocate the aircraft to a designated area by the FAA, or take further legal action if necessary following local and state laws regarding abandoned property, which is a very costly option. So the only teeth that we have in the case of number 162 on our wait list gets ticked off because the number one person on the wait list, or the number 3 person on the wait list, or the number 4, whoever gets a hangar, at some point in time, they may file an official complaint. And this is where the meat and potatoes of my argument is. I would not want to ever guide you all to make a decision that would, one, jeopardize our grant assurances. Because in the worst case scenario, which I operate worst case scenario, we would have to pay back. And there are cases out there where airports had to pay back millions of dollars, some all the way back to 20 years. The other case, and ALDOT is a prime example of this, in the past, when it was a formal complaint and it was brought up from our stakeholders, FAA, ALDOT, and then nothing come of it. In other words, we said, this is our policy, even though it doesn't necessarily align with yours. They've withheld grants for up to 5 years for those airports. The last thing I want to do is jeopardize the momentum and the grants that we're getting. I want to operate by the book. What is the book? The FAA and ALDOT's, which is essentially the FAA's policy. I think that the rule 2.12, 2.13, and 2.19 are not inclusive and not clear outside of a means of coming to a conclusion of what does a tenant have to do. I think that 16.2 under private hangars, I think that is very crystal clear of what is expected and what will happen if you don't abide by the rule. In my opinion, like I said earlier, a lot of rules, the minimum standards included, needs to be addressed. In due time, I think a lot of these things will be corrected and there'll be some things omitted and maybe some things added to make it crystal clear of what is expected of ground lease tenants, private hangar, community hangar, airspace wise or otherwise. So I apologize for the lengthy discussion there, but essentially I want to let you know that the way that I see 16.2, the way that the FAA sees 16.2 is that it is acceptable. The region, FAA region, the airport district's office, they have provided no additional comments or objections to the rule. They have provided me basically saying that it is acceptable way to define what is indefinitely non-operational aircraft from the policy, which is the FAA hangar use policy. And the only recommendation from them is to make sure that the airport users are aware of the new rule. That was the only comment from region. Last thing I will mention is our current tenants. Our current lease agreement. This is not something that, the way the rules read right now, I should go and start sending certified mail and dragging people out of hangars, which is not something that anybody wants to do. The abandoned property law essentially is very expensive, and we only have one abandoned non-airworthy airplane on this airport, and it is not the jet. The jet it's not abandoned. They're paying monthly rent, $150. There's only one airplane that is at this airport that is non-airworthy and abandoned, and will be addressed by me after this meeting.
I know.
The lease.
We already dealt with that one. It's sitting behind the North Alabama Aviation hangar.
They're not paying rent, so therefore
We should
they
call
are
it out
abandoned.
in the open meeting.
Yeah, I'm not wanting to call them out per se. I will talk to the owner and get it rectified and get them on the books as far as paying rent as all the other aeronautical users do.
Right.
Our lease agreements, the ones that were signed back in 2019, I want to just read something. That way it's crystal clear because not everybody have maybe looked at their lease. The agreement shall commence on October 1st, 2019 and remain in effect for a period of 3 years. Thereafter, this agreement shall continue in effect from month to month, being automatically renewed each month unless 30-day written notice is given by either party that the agreement would not be renewed. I do not see a case in the near future for me to have to redo leaseholders. According to the FAA and stakeholders and everybody else, eventually everyone will have to conform to the hangar use policy set forth by the FAA. When that time period comes, I'm not going to say. We can adjust the rent based on the rental agreement without having to even redo the lease as it stands. But as people change over, those new lessees will have to adhere to the new rule 16.2. And eventually we'll get it so that everybody here has an airworthy, safe flying airplane and is hopefully buying avgas so that we can further the airport, which is also a grant insurance, as we are required to be as self-sustaining as possible. So with that being said, I would appreciate full support of the board on the new addition to our rules and regulations so that I have something to carry forward with something that has not happened in at least 5 years in my eyes, which is a new empty hangar has come available that was not a transfer from someone buying an aircraft. This is the first during my tenure, and I believe most of Fouts' tenureship as well. And so that is the reason why we're having to drag these skeletons out of the closet and deal with them at this point in time. And we hadn't dealt with it the first month I was here.
No, we had hangers from Fouts.
Okay, so Mr. Sheriff, you have asked to speak first, and Mr. Minor, you are after that.
So aeronautical activity, it says, aircraft registration, restoration is aircraft activity. Right? So an aircraft that's built in the 1930s that has an airworthiness certificate is an aircraft. We're going to give somebody building a home built a year, but somebody that has an airworthiness certificate on aircraft that takes a year to cover in fabric, 90 days. And who is going to determine what's airworthy? And I spoke to the FAA about this. And I've spoken to several FBOs and several people that sign leases at other FBOs, and nowhere in it does it say that an aircraft in a hangar has to be airworthy in that hangar. It has to be aviation related. It has to be an aviation related activity. So you can't rebuild an ELT to sell somewhere. That's a commercial activity. But if it's an airplane and you're working on your airplane in your hangar, that's an aviation activity, whether you like it or not. As far as selling avgas, with the AIP that I read, 450 pages of it, I read 300 of them yesterday. We actually have to allow people to bring their own gas to this airport, or we're in risk of risking AIP money. So if somebody wants to bring their own gas to this airport that's ethanol free, we have to allow that. So we can't exclude people. And that's what this rule is exclusionary. And yeah, he makes a good argument. And we made the same argument at this meeting. And, we came up with this 212, which is really unenforceable about the airworthy. And that's the only reason I asked you guys for your logbooks, because I was trying to make a point. Nobody wants to bring the logbooks up here to prove the aircraft's airworthy. So I speak against it. In fact, I would like to get rid of that line item in 212 and say aircraft, not aircraft that are airworthy. Because we don't have the authority to decide what's airworthy.
Mr. Minor?
I'd like, can you provide an example of ALDOT penalizing somebody for breaking this rule that you described about unairworthy aircraft in hangars? And do you have an example of that?
I've got an example of them communicating with an airport sponsor that didn't adhere to rules and regulations, and therefore they were unable to obtain grants. It was not specifically this, but why chance it? Why chance a formal complaint being filed against us that could risk millions of dollars of grants, which then could bring millions of dollars of infrastructure and investment into the airport and yield revenue for us?
Yeah. I got another question. I got multi-parts here. What about insurance here? In the rules and regulations that's enforced today, do we have copies of everybody on this airfield that's got an airplane here? Do we have a copy that they've got insurance?
We do the best that we can to get all of that. And
what does that mean?
I received an email today with the updated information of an aircraft that's based here.
Yeah, but do we require everybody here, according to this rules and regulations, to have the insurance? Do we have a copy of their insurance?
At some point in time we have. I have not.
No, we don't have. You don't have everybody here at the airport.
My answer would be yes, that we do, but I'm not gonna 100% say that, because what if somebody's renewed last month and hadn't received it yet?
Nobody's
I
asked
don't
me
know
for
that.
insurance certificate on 3 aircraft in ever that I remember. I know you don't
Then
have
we'll,
mine.
we'll correct
I
that.
know
We
you
have
don't
to
have
be,
mine.
we'll have to be a listed additional insured, and I'll contact you tomorrow as a
Yeah.
tenant, not a board member.
But what about everybody else that's here? If we're gonna enforce the rules and regulations, we need to do it. It hadn't been enforced since you've been here,
Would
and
you
it
like
wasn't
for me to
enforced
enforce
under
them?
Adam Faust. So,
Would you like for me to enforce them?
well, that's what they're for. I'm just making a point that we hadn't been enforcing the rules and regulations, and now we want to add to it. And I feel like that actually, instead of protecting them, it's more putting us at risk.
Can you explain?
Because we're gonna become what's airworthy and what's not airworthy, what's safe and what's not safe to fly. I don't want to be in that position of telling anybody here it's their aircraft safe or not safe. I'm not qualified. I don't want no part of it. I think there's a risk factor here. Plus, you're gonna cause a lot of hate and discontent. You start pulling airplanes out of hangars and putting them up for sale. Gonna cause a lot of lawsuits, gonna be a lot of legal action. I just, we did a good job. We put a huge effort into this rules and regulation, and we cleaned up some messes. We didn't clean them all up, but we cleaned up some messes. And there was an email. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
Please do.
There was an email the other day that you sent back about aircraft and your aircraft. You're the airport director.
Absolutely.
You run this place. And you said your aircraft's not based here.
I didn't say that. I said it hasn't been here since July of 23.
So you're here, you draw a salary every month, you run the airport, but your airplane's not here. What does that mean? I was actually pretty upset when I saw that.
Yeah,
That you own an aircraft, but it's not here at Decatur and you're the airport director.
yeah, I'd love,
It's kind of how to put them here.
He's got a hangar space for his airplane.
yeah, I'd love to answer it. Absolutely. It is what I would consider a private matter, but I'd love to speak about it just so that it's crystal clear, because I don't make rules for thee and not for me. Everything applies for me. I pay full service avgas and everything else so that I can further the place that I call home, which is Pryor Field. My airplane has been undergoing major maintenance, full overhaul at Huntsville International. It is now at a hangar as of yesterday afternoon at Pryor Field with all logbooks, which Mr. Sheriff is in my office.
Very good.
The only one designated to look at my logbooks is the FAA FSDO, and I'm happy to bring the FSDO up here and we can go through hangar to hangar and see what's airworthy, but that's not what's good for our tenants. But what is good is to say that moving forward from today, as new leaseholders sign leases, they have to adhere to the FAA's policy, which they have email proof. I'd love to pass it around. Email proof that they attached the hangar use policy and sent to me saying that the rule is justified and acceptable in their eyes. And it upholds the grant assurances and it holds to the hangar use policy, which is for airworthiness, which is for aeronautical activity, which is meaning airworthy, which is just safe flying. Who determines that? Again, pilot command. That is 91.7, 91.3. No person may operate civil aircraft unless it is in airworthy conditions. Pilot command is justified to do that. I'm not saying that our rules and regulations are perfect. I'm not saying any airport's regulations are perfect. This is a 1% case that just so happened to pop up, and I'm not against anybody. I want everybody to come. Matter of fact, the way that I see it today, if I enforce the rules, Mr. Minor, the way that they sit, if you don't have an airplane that is airworthy flying into this airport to come to a hangar on a lease that you just signed, you can't get the hangar. That's the way they read currently. The new rule allows that person to bring an airplane here for final assembly, for maintenance, otherwise. My understanding is that the person that has been brought up, that I have not name dropped, but has been brought up last meeting, is wanting to buy an airplane, lease an airplane. It doesn't matter to me, but it may matter to the 160 person on the list that says you are not doing right by me as an aeronautical user. Again, more than 160 people on our wait list looking to come here that all have, according to me, I hadn't fact checked every one of them, but all of them would say that they have airplanes ready to move here,
Mhm.
but yet they can't because I gave it to somebody that may or may not ever conduct aeronautical activity in a hangar. But giving them the opportunity to do that, which would be 120 days total, because 90 days and 30 days to rectify it. So technically that math, 120 days. I have bought 2 airplanes since I have received my pilot certificate in 2015, excuse me. I've done all of that, closing and everything within 45 days. I don't see a reason, leasing an airplane is even less than that. I think that all of that is acceptable. The other grant assurance that I want to mention, being self-sustaining, grant assurance 23. We have had at this table so many discussions about Adam. We need to be selling more fuel. We need to do this. We're in a bad spending spot. Our finances are bad. And I've argued the point that we're good. I mean,
Adam,
again,
we
I've
lost
gone
money
through that.
forever up here.
And
It
we are,
makes a little bit of money now. Actually, the net last month was what? What was the actual net when you take the grants out? You take everything out and you put in this airport improvement program of expenditure.
that's what the net operating income is, which is
23,000, wasn't it?
$21,667.41.
You know, when it was negatives, I was trying to warn about spending money. Yeah, the airport's in better shape now. There's been a lot of work done to try to make it better. I'm glad your airplane's back. Because when I saw that you weren't based here, you weren't here for how long? Almost a year and a half. You know, it got my attention. And I'm glad your explanation is good. You're rebuilding it. I'm glad it's back here.
I took it to a
But-
mechanic shop to do that, by the way.
What's that?
I took it to a mechanic shop to do that.
We went to a repair station.
Yeah, that's all fine and dandy. And all this other stuff that you just described. But the case is, why do we have a waiting list? Why do we even have one? You know, when I got on the board, I went to the waiting list. It was about 20 some odd people. Spent a lot of effort calling them, try to get in touch with everybody. Do you still have an airplane? Do you still want a hangar? There was no dates. How long have you been on a waiting list? Nobody else wanted to take it up. I took it up. I volunteered to take it up. And now you said we went from 110 or so recently, now 160 plus on the list.
Something like that.
How many of those are really on the list? But why have we got a list? If we're gonna pick and choose who gets the hangar.
I'm
Are we
not for
going by the
lists,
list?
Mr. Minor. I'm not for lists.
So you're not for a list.
But I'm
so-
gonna use the list
Yeah,
on the
why?
private hangars because that's the
So
model that
you're
y'all
not gonna
adopted
use a
before.
list, so somebody walks in the door right now and say, hey, I got a CJ4, I need in a hangar.
That's not the same thing. That's not the private hangars. That's a corporate hangar, which I'll,
Okay,
do
they got
everything
they got a C9. They wanna put it in the hangar.
I'm gonna do everything to put them in a hangar.
Okay, well, what about the people that's been waiting for years on that hangar space?
The C90
Why did
doesn't
they
fit
get
in a
past
private
that?
hangar.
Why do they get passed up?
They don't fit.
They don't fit in the private hangar.
Okay, so it's, let's say you got a twin Comanche. Why does that person get a hangar
you're
and
bringing
somebody's
it
been
up.
waiting for 10 years on a hangar and don't have one? But we give it to somebody else. I don't like that concept. I don't think it's fair.
Most of the issue with the piston engine aircraft is they don't pay the same rate because it's not tied to a business that can afford the rate of a corporate hangar. So if there's a twin Comanche out there that would love to pay $750 a month, please give me a call.
You're missing the point. I'm just talking about who's in line to get a hangar. Being
Piston
fair
engine
about it.
airplanes. The wait list that we currently have that is actually quote unquote published in my office is piston engine airplanes that for private hangars or otherwise.
Yeah.
Or
So why
community.
does the first person on the list not get it?
Because we don't have the space. This
Well,
is
you
the
just-
first
My
hangar that has
understanding
come.
is there's a hangar coming available.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be, somebody's gonna take that hangar, it's gonna open up too. Is that correct?
That transaction's already taken place, yes.
Okay,
So in other words, now I can move 2 people off of the wait list instead of
Okay.
just one.
So are we going to use the next two people on the wait list, or are we going somewhere else?
I'm going to use the first two people as indicated last month. I know you weren't here, but yes, absolutely. I'm going to use the wait list for the two people. The number one person, the number two person will be contacted, the number three person, and go on until
Okay.
somebody's ready to assume the hangar. Absolutely.
That's just the point I wanted to get to. We need, if we're gonna have a list, we need to go by the list.
And that is very much a policy that we can adopt or we're not. There's no official, to my knowledge, there's no official FAA determination on that we have to have a wait list. It's just good practice for the people that are looking to us to make a determination. But as far as the business side, the one that buys the most fuel in my eyes should go there, but that's not what I'm looking to do. But that would be smart to,
We got
especially
rid of
somebody
the
that,
best
that
fuel
preaches.
buyers we ever had. They left us. We're talking about fuel. If we're gonna talk about that.
He's talking about little airplanes.
Yeah, I'm talking about, you just said about fuel, who buys the most fuel? We lost our best fuel customer.
I think we've gotten a little off topic.
So.
Let's take a look back at the rules and regulations. Sure, yes.
So the airworthiness is what I've got a gripe with. I get it. We're all trying to do the same thing. And, you know, I apologize. I got a little bit upset while I was trying to read my motion and my information preluded that. But the airworthiness is the elusive thing. Just because an airplane's an annual, just because it has insurance doesn't mean it's airworthy.
100%.
So we are not the body to decide whose airplane is airworthy at all. I don't want the liability. I don't think the board wants the liability. I don't think the airport needs the liability. I don't think it ought to be worded that way. I have a problem with the wording of it. I have a problem with the way 212 is worded too, aircraft airworthy. It ought to be an it ought to be an aviation endeavor in the hangar. As far as airplanes with fuel, that's how I got a hangar when I first got my hangar for the Twin Comanche. I bought a lot of gas from the people that ran this place before the board ran this place. A lot of gas. And that's how I was given a hangar, because I bought more fuel than anybody else on the airport. And I knew how it worked. So I bought a lot of gas. I flew a lot of airplanes.
Mr. Fox, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it just shouldn't be that way. You know what I mean? And I know we all want the same thing. We want somebody flying airplanes. We got to figure out a better way of doing it though, that we all can agree on.
Mr. Fox.
I just want to point out one thing that's in our lease agreements, and the rule 16.2 is basically layman's terms of what's already in the lease agreement. It's use of premises, and it reads the following: the hangar hereby leased shall be used for the storage of aircraft owned or leased by a lessee pursuant to FAA Order 5190.6B. There you go. Airport compliance requirements. And the lessee shall allow to perform maintenance on the aircraft within or on the leased premises, provided that it is not done in a manner that would be unsafe, unsightly, or detrimental to the efficient use of airport facilities by others. AKA, you can't take 15 years to restore something. Lessee will dispose of any used oil. This goes into more or less the hazard side of things. But that paragraph is in our current lease, and I'm looking at one that is executed. And that is in there. So in other words, this is reiterating what is already established by the FAA.
I've got 5160B right here, and it mentions aircraft restoration and major maintenance.
Absolutely.
Just because an airplane isn't airworthy doesn't mean there's not aviation endeavors going on inside that hangar. I'm in agreement. It needs to be aviation. We all argued that on this board. We all cleaned out the hangars and cleaned out the storage facilities and the bass boats. There were bass boats in the hangars when I got here. And cars.
Chairwoman,
Yes.
my compromise, because again, I don't want anything to be left to be up for interpretation moving forward as I deal with new lessees. The intended purpose is for the storage of aircraft for their intended purpose, which is flying. I'm perfectly fine with taking out the word airworthy and just leaving that it is flyable, because it is understood per FAR 91.66 and 7 that an aircraft flying has to be airworthy. So therefore it's captured there anyways. Airworthy is more or less just me saying that I don't want anything to be unsafe, but if a pilot in command takes an airplane up that is unsafe, they are liable for every action that they take, and their certificate, their insurance, and then being sued by us for anything that they do that is detrimental to anyone's property or destruction thereof is on them. Taking out the word airworthy satisfies Mr. Scherf, which allows this rule to go in because a flying airplane is what the hangar is used for.
Do you know how long the wait list is for a Cincinnati aluminum prop that goes on a 150 horse Cessna 150?
Under special circumstances, times can be adjusted with written permission from the airport director. At
It's
that
over
point in
6
time-
months to wait on a prop right now. That's how long the supply chain is. So an aircraft that's being restored, that's built in 1930, can you imagine trying to find a wooden prop for that or a spinner? It might take you 9 months. It might be whenever I find it. That doesn't mean they're not trying.
Absolutely. And
I think we can clean it up a little bit better than that. I appreciate your effort. I do,
Nine-
and I want the same thing you want.
9 out of 10 airplanes that have to go under major maintenance are going to be at a repair station. They're not going to be done within the hangar, but there is that one. And obviously, there is a grace period that is captured under the last statement of that rule, which is if you are making reasonable efforts to do that, if I come back a year later in March, by the way, which is when I go from hangar to hangar, and there is nothing being done to that aircraft, a conversation will happen. Let's just speak scenarios. What are you doing to rectify this? I've got 160 people on the wait list that want to fly and want this hangar, but you're making no effort to fix your airplane to make it flying. No, Mr. Fox, here's conversations. Absolutely. Here's a new letter that states you have more time to fix your airplane. Continue on. Another to come back. Where are you? I know more than anybody, Mr. Sheriff. My airplane is just now back home since July 28th of 2023. I had structural damage and I had major overhaul that happened to my airplane that wasn't called the pre-buy. So I understand the length of time for things. I know exactly. I'm not here to punish anybody, but I am here to stand before those stakeholders that I have to answer to on your behalf. And I have to make sure that we are doing everything moving forward by the book. And that is what I'm proposing. And I'd like full support from the board on that.
Mr. Powell,
I yield.
any other questions or comments? Do we have any motions on this proposed rule?
Yeah, I really believe that airport manager, director is trying his best to do what's in the best interest for the airport. And Rule 16.2, as proposed and amended, I think will give him some more tools in his kit to do his job. So I move that Rule 16.2 as amended be accepted.
Amended, I just want to clarify, amended meaning taking out the word airworthy?
Airworthy, correct.
All right, we have a motion to accept as amended. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hey,
All right, we have 2 opposed. The rules and regulations motion has passed. All right, moving on to reports. Mr. Fox, the airport director's report.
Yes, ma'am. Just go over some of the numbers from December. December of 2024, we sold 16,899.2 gallons after our month-long closure, getting the word back out that we are open and willing and eager to serve those people. So those numbers are a little bit lower than December of 2023 at 21,000. Month prior, which is during the closure, thank God we got air evac here. Month prior in November, we sold 10,320 gallons. Our annual total year to date, 52,777 gallons. Previous year to date, 65,736 gallons. I'm fully prepared and think that we will surpass this number with ease. 100 low lead avgas, we sold 3,550 gallons. We beat the previous year, December 2023, at 3,460 gallons. Month prior, we sold 1,757 gallons. Annual year to dates 10,262. Previous year to dates 13,073 gallons. Some FBO operations by the numbers. Fuel revenue, 99,771, cost of goods sold, 58,561, leaving us a gross profit margin of 41.3%. Breakdown of some of our other revenues: rent, 21,330, concessions, 175, fees that we charge to transient, not base tenants, $11,830.95. And we received another income, other income of $14,145, which was our farm rental for the property that is being farmed. Vertile report, 1,190. Go through some of the noteworthy airplanes briefly. 10 operations XLS, several operations Citation 10, one from Challenger 300, several Phenom operations from a 100 to a 300 Falcon 20. We had 3 operations. Gulfstream 288, Beechjet 1, Learjet 7514. Those are just some of the business aircraft that we saw conducting business in North Alabama through Pryor Field, the gateway to North Alabama. Public involvement, obviously through the holiday, we had a lot of things that we participated in to get our name out there, which is a direct result of why our wait list has increased now. Thank God. We got a lot of interest in doing business here, which is good in my eyes. North Alabama Airfest, no real update. Starting to look at a new sponsorship for conducting helicopter rides. Anybody that's interested in that, please contact me. They are looking for a sponsor to come out and give, I believe it is 15 sponsor rides for that sponsorship. There'll be 2 Hueys and a Cobra. We are looking at signing a contract with Air Boss Sound and Announcer this month. So that is something that I'll report on next month. Airport developments. I've got a meeting tomorrow with a new MRO from Tennessee that is looking at going into an existing hangar facility if possible. They are looking at potentially doing a design build. In other words, we build them a facility and allow them to operate there. They are looking at around 10,000 square feet. I think getting them here is a great start, and then looking at that down the future as we are, getting grants and we are increasing our revenues and other things. So maybe we can accommodate that in the future. So more.
I'm sorry, who was that asking about us providing him?
I can let you know outside of the meeting if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have moved a lot of aircraft around to maximize our hangar space. Equipment usage, I have been asked to report on that, Mr. Minor. I just want to let you know that we have used our air stairs and as well as a lot of other equipment. The exact number on all the equipment is not before me, but I will say that we did use the air stairs one time since the November meeting, which in my opinion is very, very much worth it. It was on a 737. We've met with Calhoun to discuss moving forward with the Center of Excellence, the A&P/Part 141 program. We had a lot of good discussion over that. More to come there. I have met with several stakeholders that operate our airport to discuss Calhoun project, and one of them has shown interest in donating a Stearman that was operating here in 1940s. It was number 48 that operated here. He wants to donate it to the airport authority. I have contacted our new accounting firm to discuss what that looks like, and I'll report to y'all as soon as I hear back on that. But I think that is great that he is looking at this flying airplane to come back to Pryor Field to be used essentially as a mascot for this program.
What state is that in?
It is in Mississippi.
But it will be in addition to the Stearman that we already have here.
We do currently have several Stearmans here, but yes,
Well,
I
that's
believe
true.
one of the Stearmans that is here is from the war days, exactly, the 1940s.
Okay,
That's the story that I've been told about it.
so this one's more for display.
Yeah, this one apparently has
Not actually-
documentation behind it and everything. And it is being used for us to put on display in the lobby area. So it would be something that would be ours that we could work out an agreement to have displayed in that area.
You just answered my second question, and that's where is it going to be displayed? But
It'd be in or
Yeah.
it may be somewhere else. I mean, I just think that
One possibility.
getting a piece of history back here is not a bad thing.
Right. But one possibility could be Calhoun's new
Yes, sir.
aviation
Yes, sir.
complex.
Yes, sir. That is all I have.
All right, any other comments or questions for Adam? All right, moving on to public comments. Any public comments?
Are we gonna find that skipping you that since I began?
Big deal to get in and out of the FBI. I got a question for you after.
Yes, sir.
Any other public comments or questions?
The board had a lot of discussion tonight, how many people were on the waiting list. The solution to a lot of your issues is build more hangars for private airplanes. Again, asking when, the board thinks that they will ever get around to doing anything on that, issue.
Personally, I hope soon, because I have an airplane that it's on that waiting list as well. But Adam, I think you can speak more to,
Absolutely. One of the issues, going back, I would say 35 years ago, is that we built hangars going north and south. And we almost run out of room essentially. Getting some more property to strategically build so that we don't cut the heels off of maybe adjacent property, is something that needs to occur, that hopefully will occur soon. At that point in time, the only other issue with general aviation hangars, as I see it right now, is can we afford to lock up money for 25 years? Because the rate that a general aviation, including myself, is willing to pay will not allow the cost of the building to be amortized in an appropriate manner. So some of these facilities, if you're willing to pay $250 or $300 for a hangar, it may take me 35 years to amortize that out. And of course, every smart business decision, you want to do that in 10 years. So there's a lot of options to digest there. One side can be smaller hangars. The next side could be larger hangars to help, cover that at cost. The other thing though, is just having those extra funds, which we are building up, obviously. We are investing back into the airport, a lot of infrastructure that's been neglected. So, we're taking care of things to be able to prepare us to be able to do those things. And there are some grants out there, but there's not very many. ALDOT grant is a 50-50, and the max that you can draw is 500,000. A lot of these hangar facilities that we currently have today, we're going to have to match that with another 500,000 or more in some cases to be able to do it, because construction costs are $450 a foot roughly. So it is very expensive to do those things. Some of the things that we could do, we could do what we've done in the past, which is very likely to happen when we get some property. And that is me propose to them that we allow people, good people that's in this room right now, that maybe wants to get a hangar by paying so many years in advance of their rent, and it locks them in for that, or maybe it locks them in at a little bit lower rate. I think that's doable. And I think that's something that obviously I will be pushing to these good people for consideration when the time comes. I hope that answers your question. As soon as possible in layman's terms.
Can I say something? It's hard to sit up here and make the argument that we shouldn't increase the hangar rate because it's $250 a month, right? Because they're not storage facilities. And that's an argument that I've made in several meetings, right? They're not storage facilities, but it's hard to pay for that hangar. It's hard to pay for that hangar when we have people that don't even buy gas here. We had people that used to take off and fly up to Pulaski and fill up their airplane with fuel and then fly it back. So when you hear my voice change, because I'm a little upset, because we're going to change our hangar rules, and I don't think it's fair, or because we don't want to increase our hangar rate. The tide raises all boats, right? But in order for us to pay for private hangars, we probably have to charge everybody $500, $750 a month. We wouldn't have a hangar waiting list if they were $750 a month, would we? We have a hangar waiting list because it's $250 a month. It's probably one of the nicest airports to fly out of in North Alabama, and we want to keep it that way. Now, Shelby County has a 40-year lease for small hangars, and they call them condominium hangars. And they're building bunches of them down in Shelby County. I just heard about it today when I talked to somebody in the FAA about what we were arguing about. And he goes, Shelby County's doing it this way, 40-year leases and letting people build their own hangars with a condominium on top of it and stuff like that. They're thinking outside the box. Maybe we can do that at one meeting. I would have brought it up tonight, but it was not an agenda item. But maybe that's something to look into. Because I'd give up my 2 hangars if I could build a hangar and have a condominium and spend the weekend here and not have to drive an hour back home to spend the night. You know what I mean? Maybe not. But we all want it.
I will say that will dictate a rule change because our rule says
Absolutely
we
will.
can't have living quarters. I just want to notify everybody.
Absolutely. Well,
If
but
someone is willing,
hangars amortized for 25 years in a small hangar doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The money doesn't work.
we are entertaining long-term ground leases. There are several people and entities that are interested in that. There could be someone that wants to build some hangars,
Oh, wow.
units, and essentially rent those out. I think that could be an option. I do believe that we will build more general aviation hangars, but let me tell you this. We have more based airplanes at Pryor Field than any other general aviation airport in the state of Alabama. If we all get out and fly, that will generate enough revenue for me to build as many hangars as this property will allow me to build. And then maybe it will generate enough revenue for me to buy adjacent property and build more hangars. And that's just how the business works. So with your help, getting flying airplanes and hangars, and buying avgas, I think that we can achieve that quicker than the inevitable of never building them again.
Any other public comments? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'm moving.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, adjourned at 6:10.
I don't answer your question. I'll say.
Oh, no,